I'll be blunt. I'm really kind of going through a period of audiophile reckoning here. Where do I even start? This video is totally unscripted, kind of unplanned, but something's been bothering me, and I think it's worth shooting a quick video on. Not too long ago, I posted a video called The Listening Drought, and the short version is it had to do with how a lot of audiophiles tend to go through periods where they don't listen because they, burn out or they get busy or whatever. In that video, I said a couple of things that I can't stop thinking about. And one of them was kind of saying, it's pretty normal for us to go through these periods where we aren't listening, and that's okay. But I think there's a flip side to that. See, on the one hand, yeah, it's okay to kind of, if you're burnt out on it, or if you're just busy with other things, that's okay because your brain can reset a little bit and then you come back fresh and with fresh enthusiasm. The flip side to that is it's possible to get on this endless cycle of like obsessing over the hobby and then burning out on it, and obsessing and burning out and doing this over and over and over. And at some point that becomes maybe not so okay. And I'm starting to get into this period where I'm going, why? Why would I do that to myself, right? So, in a later part of that same video, I said something like, if you want to know the truth, sometimes I think about completely dumping my whole system and totally starting over from scratch. And ever since I posted that video, I can't stop thinking about that part. I think maybe I should do it. Maybe I should just sell everything, start over. Heck, I can vlog that part of my journey, because this whole audiophile thing, it is a journey. Maybe not for everybody, because there are some people who are really just the music lover audiophiles, and some audiophiles are not equipment people. The equipment is just a means to play the music that they love. But then there's a lot of audiophiles, and I think the real hobbyist type audiophiles, the hobby for them is the equipment, right? And it is changing out different equipment and having different experiences and trying out different methods of sound reproduction and how that affects the total system. And all of this endless tweaking and equipment changes really is the source of fun. And then the music becomes sort of a means to do that, right? And in that type of audiophilia, I think it's really, really easy to burn yourself out because you're listening critical all of the time, and you're maybe using the music not for the love of the music, but for the love of the gear. And I personally have gotten myself into this trap over the years, probably too much. So while it's okay to go through periods where you're, not really feeling the system and not really feeling like listening critically to music and this sort of thing, that's okay because it does reset your brain. But I think at some point you have to have a period of reckoning where you have to question whether that's serving you anymore. And for me personally, I ever since I posted that listening drought video, this seems to be really the catalyst here. I can't stop thinking about why in the heck I would be doing this to myself. Why am I putting myself on a constant cadence of burning myself out on music, the thing that I'm supposed to be loving about all this? It's gotten to where, especially in my A system, because I've got two systems, really an A rig and a B rig. The A system is tubes, vinyl, heavily acoustically treated, dedicated listening room, all of the great audiophile stuff, right? I got to where anytime I listen to that system, it's really hard to just sit and listen to music, even though it's fantastic equipment. Even though it's, I got the room sounding about as good as I can get that room sounding. Even though there's really nothing wrong with it, It's really hard to listen to that system and not get through a song or two before jumping up and wanting to tweak something. Maybe I can just get this a little bit better. Gee, do I really have the speakers exactly how I want them? Maybe I should move that acoustic panel over there. Maybe it's in just the wrong spot. Can I get the sound stage just a little bit more even? Can I get the frequency response just a little bit more even? Did I hear a crackle from that tube? Is it time to get new tubes? It's so hard to just sit down, shut up, and listen to the music in that system to the point that I'm not necessarily using that system enough. Then I get all defeated in myself because I've got this really nice system that I feel like it's going to waste. But at the same time, I go and listen to it and it starts to quickly burn me out because I start listening critically. I fall into this audiophile trap of trying to tweak endlessly. And what could I do to get off of that roller coaster ride? You know, at what point am I not just getting the little dopamine boost or whatever reason we're doing this for? And I really am starting to think that I've gotten to that point where it really is time to just get rid of everything, sort of spiritually burn it all down to the ground and see what rises out of the ashes. And it's not the first time I've felt this way, but you know, and I hate to keep self-promoting this listening drought video, but that video really got me thinking. It's okay that hardly any of you watched it, because for me, that became such a catalyst for a personal journey that I think I need to go through. For me, it wasn't just a listening drought. The hobby itself, the way I'm handling it, probably isn't serving me anymore. And in that video, I said, the thing that stops me from just selling everything and starting over as well, I sit down and listen to it and I remember how great it is, you know, and how nice it sounds, and that I don't want to get rid of it. You know what, though? That's not a good enough reason. That is not a good enough reason to keep that equipment around. And it's not a good enough reason to keep doing what I'm doing. And at what point do I get rid of everything, consolidate two good systems, I would say one very good system and one competent, if less exciting system, into one, and just make things easy for myself and frickin' appreciate what I got? Because let's not kid ourselves. This whole problem that I'm describing in this video, it comes from such a place of privilege. Oh, woe is me. I've got really nice equipment. It's so nice it drives me crazy. Boo-hoo. Oh, I feel stupid, right? But so don't think for a second that I don't appreciate having that stuff, and being a part of this hobby is definitely a privileged thing. Most people don't care about high-end audio, and as far as the people who do, I think some people it's aspirational, where they see these fancy tube amps and they see this aesthetically pleasing, expensive equipment and they go, I aspire to that, right? That is something I want in life. And then one of two things happens. You never get it and you always kind of aspire to it and always feel like you haven't sort of gotten there in your journey. Or you get it and you find out that you're kind of trading one set of problems for another. So now you've got the equipment of your dreams, but it requires a lot of maintenance. It requires a lot of setup. You're inclined to tweak and this sort of thing. And that starts to burn you out. And I think that maybe is what happened. 22, 23 years ago, I started really getting into high-end audio. Now, I've always cared about music listening and I've always cared about equipment ever since I was a little kid. I remember being 15 years old and strolling into a proper high-end audio shop for the first time. It was recommended to me by my best friend at the time's dad. I think I had some birthday money, and I decided that I wanted a decent pair of speakers, kind of best I could find for the money. And instead of going to the big box store to get whatever they had, I remembered about this audiophile shop, and so I went to it, and my goodness, it was room after room of the craziest equipment. I had no idea it even existed. There were cables the size of garden hose, and there were just all kinds of crazy esoteric boxes, and they had the tube equipment, which I hadn't really seen before as a child of the 80s and 90s. It wasn't really in favor back then. And all this stuff, and I ended up buying my first pair of OK bookshelf speakers. They were Clements Audio 107 DIs, which I still have in a closet somewhere. I'm sure they need to be rebuilt at this point. I don't know. I haven't had them out in years. But that kind of started my whole journey. By the time I got to my early 20s, I started to go, okay, I'm really getting into audio reproduction and starting to really appreciate what sounds good out there. And so I decided that I would put together kind of a lifetime system, something that was going to be so good that I would just be set for life. I would never want to change anything. And I would just, it would be one less thing to worry about in life. Put together a really nice hi-fi that I could listen to my music on forever. And for me, it really was that I was really, really into music and really listening to music. And I'd started to really gain an appreciation for just sitting and listening to albums, the way you would just sit and watch a movie with no other distractions, not as background noise, but listening to music for the sake of sitting and having the experience of listening to music. So I got busy. I got busy going to high-end audio shops, and I started understanding what it is I wanted in terms of audio reproduction, what was interesting to me. I listened to high-end turntables, and I listened to nice CD players, and I listened to really interesting solid-state equipment, solid-state monoblocks, integrated amps. I listened to tube monoblocks, tube integrateds, tube stereo amps, the whole gamut, everything that's out there. I took a listen to it. I listened to different cables to see if that could really be true, that cables made a difference, and they do. For better or worse, they'll drive you nuts, and a lot of them are way more expensive than they ought to be for what they do, but they do make a difference. And so I started gaining all this experience, and I started making some of my first purchases. I bought my first tube amp. It was a Conrad Johnson MV55, and that was really one of the first nice pieces I bought. By then I had stumbled across an acoustic research turntable that some guy was selling really cheap. It cosmetically was in bad shape, but I put a decent cartridge on it and it had an okay arm already. And I didn't care what the whole thing looked like, so I had this cheap turntable, and my God, it was a revelation. I learned how to set up the spring suspension on it. I bought a Shure cartridge for it. It had a Linn basic tone arm, nothing fancy, but competent. And it was a revelation. I didn't know records could sound so good. So pretty quickly, I decided to step up my turntable game. So after a little while of playing this AR turntable through, I think I was just using an integrated amp for a preamp and running that out to a tube amp. That tube amp really showed me what amplification could do. Before long, I had bought a tube preamp, which was a JJ Electronic 243, which I still have. And so then I had my amplifiers sorted out, really nice tube amps, and then that really made me go, okay, now I need a better source. And so I bought a Michel Gyro SE turntable, which I also still have, put a really nice tone arm on it, put a really nice cartridge on it. I've been through a few cartridges on that turntable now, but all that to say, I put together this system and went, great. I never need to worry about this system again. And although I ended up going through lots of different amplifiers over the years, I always kept the preamp and I always kept that turntable. I still have that stuff. I have a lot of nostalgia for it now because I've had it my whole adult life, right? But it's really driven me crazy over the years, this stuff. And so now I'm in this period of reckoning where I'm going, okay, just because I had equipment for a long time, developed some nostalgia for it, developed a rapport with it, doesn't mean it's still serving me. And that's not a good enough reason to keep using it, or worse yet, to keep it around and not use it because I just know it's going to burn me out. The constant tweaking and maintenance and this sort of thing. And just because I bought it for a lifetime of use doesn't mean I have to do that. So if dumping everything I've ever loved and starting over with something else that may not be as interesting and may not sound as good, if that got me back to just being able to sit and listen to the music and enjoy the music and not be inclined to play around all the time with endless tweaking and setup fixes and questioning whether I'm getting everything I could out of it. If I could just get something competent, wouldn't that serve me better? And I think it probably would. So that's really what's going on and why I was inclined to just sit and make this rambling video. Yes, you can go through listening droughts and it's okay, and you'll be back to it and you'll feel fresh again. That does happen to me in this cycle, but at some point you got to ask yourself, is that cycle serving me? Is this stuff putting me into a situation that is really working for me? Am I happy with it? And if you really can't justify what you're doing with your systems through any other means than, well, I've had it a long time and I would miss it, or, well, if I downgraded, wouldn't I just spend the rest of my life pining for that nice stuff that I had that I got rid of? Gee, wasn't that a stupid thing to do? I don't think those are good enough reasons not to try. Maybe as this winter goes on, maybe what I ought to do is make some videos with this equipment. And spoiler alert, the stuff I have now, I do have a few videos that are in various stages of production where I am going to go a little bit deeper into my equipment because that is part of the audiophile journey. But I think another part of the audiophile journey is this period of reckoning where you go, you know what? It's time to just stop, really reevaluate what's important. Is it the equipment that I care about, or was this all supposed to be about the music? Did you get away from the whole reason that you started doing this? And for me, I think, yeah, maybe I did get too far away from what this was supposed to be. At some point, it stopped being as much about the music and started being too much about the equipment, the setup, the tweaking, the whole thing of being an audiophile. I think that got on top of me. And who needs two systems? I don't need two systems. I never intended it to be that way, right? I was supposed to have a really nice system to listen to music on. And then, in my living room, I just had a TV and some video games, and that was good enough. And then after a while, that wasn't good enough. I wanted better sound, so I got better speakers. And then that made me want better amplification, and so I got that. And before I knew it, I had another totally decent system. And then I wasn't listening to my main system as much anymore because, let's be honest, the B system was easier to use, and it was more accessible, and it wasn't just about music. It was also about another love of mine, which is cinema. And so it became this multi-purpose rig for all of the things that I really enjoyed. I probably am starting to listen to music as much on that system now as on my main A system, which is silly because the A system is so much better sounding, but it just sort of sits in this dedicated room. Why am I doing that to myself? This is stupid. All that equipment that I've come to love and appreciate having, maybe it's just driving me crazy and it's time for a change. Would I miss it when it's gone? Oh yeah, I definitely would. Would I get rid of tubes completely and go solid state? Probably. And it kills me to say that because I love the sound of tubes. I really do, but I don't know. Sometimes they're a barrier to access. You always have to worry if they're going bad. You always have to worry about, keeping them in bias and reliability. So, it's another thing that I would love to not have to worry about, even though I love the sound of them. I hate having to wait half an hour for them to warm up because they don't really sound right for the first half an hour that they're on. So I got sick of having to schedule listening sessions in a way that I go, okay, well, I want to listen to music now, but I have to wait a half an hour, so I'll go and switch stuff on, and I have to hope that in half an hour I still want to listen to that music and that impulse hasn't left. So Boy, would I miss tube amps. I really, really would, but maybe they're not what I need anymore if I'm truly in this thing for listening to music, not listening to equipment, but listening to music. Those aren't serving me. I feel the same way about the turntable. Gorgeous turntable. Sounds fantastic. For as pricey as it is, it's actually a pretty good value in audio. Those Gyro SEs, they're great turntables. They sound wonderful. There's a reason they've been in production for decades now, but they're spring suspended turntables, and there again, half the time I put a record on the platter and I start worrying about, well, did it go off level since the last time I was listening to it? Normally they're pretty stable, but over time, when you've had springs long enough, you know probably that every once in a while you need to do some adjustments. So there's always this sort of worry about tweaking. And even if you don't have a suspended turntable, any turntable, you need to make sure it's dead level. You need to make sure that the settings are still happy, that your vertical tracking force and angle and everything else are still where they're supposed to be. Usually when you get those things dialed in, it's pretty stable, but if the turntable gets bonked, or if your cartridge gets old and you need to replace it, new cartridge is going to throw all those settings off. You have to start over with that. Turntables are a real pain. This tactile experience with these things, I think, is important for a lot of us, but it's also a barrier to listening, and that's the flip side to it. So would I get rid of vinyl? No. Would I get rid of that turntable and get something fixed plinth with very, very simple adjustments, minimal adjustments? Might be time to do that and simplify. And I would have to downgrade from that turntable because if I sold that off, the money I would raise from it, boy, with the way prices have changed now, I don't think I'd be able to get anything better or necessarily even equivalent. So that's another reason that I still have it, to be honest with you. And so there's all these things that have been on my mind. Well, it might be time to just go, I would rather downgrade a notch or two in quality for something that I'm going to use more. I would rather give up the magic of tubes that I love so much for a good sounding, if not quite as special, still good sounding solid state rig that is satisfying enough and that wouldn't drive me nuts all the time and put me on this cycle of obsessing and then burning out and not wanting to listen for a while, and then obsessing and burning out and not wanting to listen for a while. Over and over and over, and then feeling stupid because now I'm sitting here whining about, oh, I have such nice equipment, it drives me crazy. So at what point do you just burn it all down, in a proverbial sense, and see what type of audio phoenix rises from the ashes? Maybe this winter I do it for real. I don't know. What do you think? I need your help. You watching this. Have you done this? Have you gone through a period where you're just like, you know what? I've enjoyed this system. It's not serving my objectives anymore. I'll miss it, but it's got to go. Have you started over completely? How did that go for you? Please do drop me a comment. I'd really love to hear what you have to say on that. And if you want to see what happens to me here, because you're along for the ride at this point. I don't know what's going to happen, but hit the subscribe button and see where my journey takes me. Because the reality is, this is kind of what it's like to be an audiophile sometimes. I don't think it's too uncommon to go through these bouts of reckoning where we're going, all right, this is not working, let's start over. Or should I cut the crap and just appreciate what I've got? Let me know what you think, and we'll see where this thing takes me. But I think it's really time to stop and reevaluate what it is I really want out of being an audiophile and out of high-end audio and out of my love for music. So that's it. That's what I had to say here. And if you've made it this far, thanks for watching. I'll see you next time, and wish me luck.